Good morning, good afternoon, good day to everyone joining us here today. This is another installment of our Common Sense Conversations with Common Sense Media. We are here to talk about AI and how it's reshaping the classroom. And I get to be here with a colleague of mine, Robbie. Say hello to everybody. Mr. Robbie Torney, he is our Senior Director of AI Programs here at Common Sense.
Hey, Merv, good morning, and good morning, folks, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Glad to be here with you today.
Yeah. I'm so excited to have you here, Robbie, because we have been doing this kind of joint work in many different ways as we look at AI and its impact, not just globally, but especially as we're thinking about how we support educators and schools, because there are so many levels of conversation that are happening right now with AI and its impact. And I think one of the biggest things that we hear a lot of, we don't want, as educators, we don't want to kind of be caught blindsided or unprepared with AI and the rate of which it can make an impact in our classrooms, and the way that maybe many of us felt when like social media and just kind of all this other kind of rampant growth of technology and that experience, not just for with ed tech, but in the experience of technology that then affected the classroom itself and our kids and their lives. And so as we come together to kind of talk about like where are we in education when it comes to AI, I would say that at least for me, we see that these levels of how do we get prepared? There is this administrative side of like, okay, what are the policies telling us, if there are even policies that are available in our states and our local jurisdictions or even federally? What does that look like? How does that guide us? And then what does this look like, for our educators, for our staff? And then ultimately, especially, like, how does that impact our kids? And how does that impact the community of families and caregivers that are a part of our school community? And so that's all really big and really complex. And it seems like schools are in a very varied places, right? Some are feeling that they're kind of really prepared for it, and others are still trying to figure out where are we. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more just about a very kind of specific event that you actually most recently had a chance to be a part of, that was at one of our great school partners at the Riverside County Office of Education down in Southern California. Could you paint a little picture, like what was the event, and then, what did you present on, and what were some big takeaways, just having such a large representative group of people in that room?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just shared about how schools are in a wide range of places, that was really resonating with me coming out of this event. The Riverside County Office of Education has been very intentional in thinking about how they support districts within Riverside County. So this is in Southern California. There's urban districts, suburban districts, and rural districts. It's a really interesting spot. They convened a space for their administrators, their district leaders, their site leaders, to come together and learn and talk about AI implementation. I think it was a really awesome time of the year to be thinking about having that conversation. Here in the US, a lot of schools are having graduations, promotion ceremonies, wrapping up the school year this week. So admin are definitely in that mode where they're thinking about how do we close out the school year, and what are we going to do over the summer? And one of the things that's really on admin's mind is thinking about, well, what are we going to do about AI implementation, and how are we going to keep that work moving forward? One of the things that we did with about the 240, 250 admin who were in the room was we asked them, where are you in your implementation? And we gave people 4 colors of sticky notes that they could hold up. Our blues were not started, our pinks were emergings, our greens were developing, and our orange was established. And the predominant color that was in the room was green, which means that people have started to think about how they're formalizing their work. They've done some initial planning, building some initial systems, or some initial training is being developed or piloted. There's still a wide range within that, of course. And there were very few districts that said that they were in that established place where they feel like they had systems that were adopted at scale, systems that were really driving student outcomes, systems that were being well resourced. So I think it does feel like it's still pretty early in the game. And I think we can talk more about why that is and some of the specific challenges, but I think it was at least very affirming to get a sense that most people have started thinking about the work, but it's still in progress.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think, in this work and talking with superintendents and administrators and even classroom educators, there's a lot to now try and kind of figure out and But then even more so, there's a lot of resources to kind of weed through. I mean, I think it seems like as we talk about AI literacy, and like AI tools, right? They are very prevalent now in so many of the spaces that we're in, whether they're at conference or they're in webinars or even just in the media. And it can be very hard to kind of focus in on where do I start? Was there a sense from the folks in that room, or just even in your broader conversations as you've been working through creating some of these resources for school communities, that if there's a place to start, here's that place? Like, what's something that everyone can just feel like, I've either, yes, I've done exactly that, or you know what, maybe this is something that we can add on to as we're exploring right now. This could be a place for us to consider. Anything that you found to be a good first step or series of first steps?
Yeah. So at the conference, we released a AI toolkit for school districts. We haven't been doing much promotion of that as folks are wrapping up their school years. But as if folks are on our email lists, they'll be getting emails about it as we move into the month of June. We put this resource together really because we were getting that exact question, Merv, from our district admin. Where do I get started? How do I get started? There's so many toolkits out there. There's so many frameworks that are out there. I think it's important to contextualize that, like, while kids, according to Common Sense Media research, are really using AI, about 70% of teens are using AI. And it isn't just teens, about 40% of kids ages 5 through 8 are reporting using AI, or their parents are reporting that they're using AI as in our most recent Common Sense census. There's still a gap in teacher usage. And when you look at polling on this, about a third of teachers say that they haven't used AI yet and they never will. About a third of teachers have either used it some or a little bit, but aren't frequent users. And only 2% of teachers say that they're using AI a lot or frequently. And I think that that gap is one that we really heard in the room at Riverside. Folks were grappling with, well, how do I engage resistant staff? How do I educate parents? How do I get my school board up to speed with what's a new technology? And I think for us, when we put this toolkit together, this was really coming from a place of, like, first, let's be really practical. We need to make sure that the resources are ready to use. They can't be complicated. They can't be really long. Like, they have to be really actionable because admin are busy. And then two, I think, is this idea that in education, so much of the work is related to managing implementation and thinking about how you get input from all of your stakeholders, right? So how can we create spaces to hear from folks that have concerns about AI, whether that's students, parents, staff, school board members, other admin? How can we talk about how AI aligns with our district's vision, mission, graduate profile, goals, aspirations, et cetera? What does running a pilot look like, and what are the things that we're going to be measuring for success along the way so that we'll know whether this is helpful or not? How do we start establishing AI policies that are specific to our school district? And I think the place that I would direct folks to is we have a getting started tool, which is a readiness assessment, which helps districts and staff map out where they are in implementation across a number of different domains or categories. So one lever that people have focused on a lot is professional development. Teachers are reporting that they're getting more PD, but they're not necessarily using AI more. And why is that? There's probably a bunch of other factors that are at play. And the readiness assessment can help you diagnose and identify associated next steps. So we'll drop the link in the comments after this, but that is the place to start. And it's a tool that can be revisited. It's a place that folks can come back to and reassess with resources that are supportive for the challenges that they're experiencing at any given stage of implementation.
I appreciate that. One thing that jumps out in what you're talking about is this idea of readiness. And I think there's the readiness as a system or a network, but there's a readiness of kind of the individuals involved. Like, in terms of like youth, right? We primarily in the K-12 space, we're looking at the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, right? And they're primed for like action. They want to get immersed and they want to do things. And then we've got like Alpha, who's like grown up online. Like AI is almost second nature to them in regards to the kind of experiences with like programs like Alexa or Siri or even ChatGPT. And so there's this interest in wanting to be a part of it, but then there's also this reality of like, how much are we prepared to bring these types of things into our classroom? And there's this, this feeling of like, are we focusing primarily on just having policies in place? Or are we focusing on like, how do we get educators on board first? versus kids. Do you have any insight into kind of like what you're seeing, or even how you're thinking about the kind of first step should really be about prepping educators, getting a sense of how it works for them, why it might work for them before even jumping into the student space. And then maybe we can jump into the student conversation after that.
Yeah, there's no one size fits all approach like this. Unfortunately, this is going to vary a lot based on like local needs and local contexts. And we know from
Yeah.
our research that kids are already using AI for personal reasons and for educational reasons, right? And
Sure.
I think the important thing to note there is first that while they might be using AI, they're not necessarily AI experts or AI literate yet. In our Teens and Trust survey, for example, we found that only less than half of teens were able to identify misinformation or hallucinations in AI output that they were working with. And that's a problem because anybody who's watching who has used a tool like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini knows that outputs can contain inaccurate information, right? So this is just one example where teens may be using platforms or apps a lot, but may not have some of the critical thinking skills established yet. And the link to educators is that we know from our research that when teens are talking to educators or parents about AI, they gain a bunch of very valuable mindsets and skills just by talking to adults. So teens are more likely to understand that they need to fact check information and understand how to do it. They're also better equipped to understand how AI may impact future jobs or career choices. So there's a lot of very valuable insights there. Right now with the way that the technology is, and we can talk about risk over the conversation if needed, like AI isn't just one thing, it's a lot of different things and they have different risk levels and risk profiles. For now, educator use is definitely safer than student use. And there's a lot of really impactful things that educators can do in the classroom. People focus a lot on time saving, but we're also seeing very cool applications that actually like reach students and increase educator impact. I think those are some of the opportunities that you unlock when you sort of allow AI into these spaces. But again, it has to be allowed in not just for the sake of bringing AI in, it has to be brought in from the standpoint of how does this support the educational values, the mission, the work of a school, classroom, or district, so that it can be appropriately contextualized for what it is, which is a learning tool.
Yeah, 100. Oh, I love that. I mean, I think really when it comes down to it in education broadly, even when you just pull back and just look at education technology in general, it's like, what is the intention? Like, how does it really truly align to what you're trying to accomplish? And it does it in a really effective way that meets the needs, the pedagogical value of that lesson or that classroom, not just for the sake of being, we're using tech or we're using AI and being able to just kind of say that we're diving into it, but really truly understanding why, its impact, and how you can kind of support that conversation, really empowering the use of it in really innovative ways. I think one thing that I've been seeing and just working with partners, there's an initial reality of just like, let's make sure educators kind of understand what it all is. Not that they have to teach about it directly, but they understand what it is, have a common language and understanding. And for educators, there's an opportunity to kind of really see how we leverage it for our own use case. And then how do we bring these conversations into a classroom just to recognize that it is a part of the cultural space for their students. It is a part of the way that they hear about things that are popping up in their more traditional social feeds. And so making having AI literacy conversations, it's both about understanding how it works, the challenges, like the hallucinations, the bias, but also the opportunities in terms of how it can extend or be a creative partner potentially, not replace, but really just help support kind of the thinking and the development of things, and recognizing that it does exist without necessarily saying, now we're going to jump all in and get to work using it, right? I think that is very much kind of the kinds of spaces, or at least the current tone that I'm seeing in some of the conversation, because some of the conversations in schools as well. One of the things you brought up though is just kind of this risk assessment. I believe that's what some of the other work that you've been supporting the organization with is really developing and identifying, making it very easy for folks to get a sense of the risk behind certain tools, the risk and the opportunities. Can you share a little bit more about kind of the risk assessment work and maybe some of the kind of big takeaways, especially with our most recent release that folks should just know about?
Yes, we are really excited about our risk assessment work, where we are evaluating different use cases and AI products across a series of AI principles, which is our definition of the types of things that we think AI should do. This is everything from using data responsibly to supporting human connection to being effective. Like, does the AI tool actually work? One class of products that we looked at recently is a set of products called AI companions. A lot of people have heard of like your ChatGPT. AI companions are different because they're primarily designed to seem human and form emotional bonds. And they're very popular with teens right now. Some of the leading apps like Character AI have millions of downloads. And Character AI itself is the third most popular consumer AI app right now. And while they say things like, I care about you, or I miss you when you're gone, they don't actually feel emotions. And we definitely went into this risk assessment being pretty balanced. There's a lot of talk out there about how AI companions might support with loneliness, or might be able to support people or learners with certain types of learning or social challenges. And when all is said and done, coming out of this risk assessment, our top line message was AI companions are not safe for teens at all. We're not recommending use of them with anyone under 18. They're designed to create attachment and harvest data in ways that's really harmful for teen brains. And there have been, unfortunately, a number of real world examples of this exact type of harm playing out, where real relationships, real world connections, real world interests have been undermined, where teens are then increasingly spending more time with artificial intelligence and in some companions, and in some cases when teens are particularly vulnerable, experiencing particular types of mental health challenges that led to things like teens harming themselves, harming others, or in particularly tragic cases, even taking their own lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a hard reality to contend with, to recognize that this is what could happen, and what is happening, unfortunately, in some situations, even with families and communities that are having some really thoughtful kind of conversations around the impact of tech in the lives of their kids and the developing minds of their kids, right? Um, I when I talk to parents, and so I was just recently down in Brazil last week for an international media literacy conference, and the focus was around media literacy and kind of that umbrella around digital literacy and well-being. And I wondered, I'm like, where's the conversation around like AI and artificial intelligence? And the response was like, the conversation is built in. Like, we need a foundation of understanding how these things work, the impact of these resources and tools when they're in the hands of everyone, especially our young kids. And how do we prepare them to really think critically about the impact of this technology? Because it can be fun, but it can also feel um, like 24/7. It can put them into situations that were unintended, and so the AI is supercharging a lot of that experience, and in many ways making it even harder because of just kind of how fast they move to sometimes tamper down the scale, or even understand or recognize kind of how deep a deep fake can really go. But what foundations are we providing them? And so those conversations around digital literacy and media literacy for everyone was very, very pertinent for them. As you think about kind of like next steps here back in the US, and the work that we're doing here, like, are there particular next steps that you'd like folks to consider now that we've got these risk assessments that are out there for folks to look at and learn more? You've got this really robust set of resources for school communities to kind of like consider where they're at, and like find the right place for them. And as an organization, we've been wanting to provide like high level standard kind of AI literacy, but digital literacy and well-being types of lessons. Like, what's that next step? Is there something that we should be considering as we're navigating this space for our kids and for our communities that we support?
I love the tie back to digital literacy, Merv, because I think that is the missing piece here. A lot of the advice that we're giving parents and educators right now is really aligned to advice that we've given in other places, right? Like, let's have regular judgment-free conversations about technology and digital experiences. That sort of trust and space to talk is a foundational aspect of being able to process what is teens' reality and is part of their everyday lives. Setting guidelines and rules of like when AI can be used and when AI can't be used. One of the schools that we profiled as a case study as part of our district toolkit, Agua Fria High Schools in Arizona. I think they operate 6 comprehensive high schools. They have a very clear way for kids to know when they can use AI, when they can't use AI, and how they can use AI across all of their classroom spaces. That creates clarity for kids, right? Not a new concept, but a novel application in the space. And it does come back to digital literacy and being able to have those conversations. Look, I think one of the things that I'm really optimistic about is that Gen Z and Gen Alpha, according to our research in our Teens and Trust research brief that we released, they've grown up with social media and they have a very healthy skepticism about big tech and big tech's incentives, right? So when you ask them, do you think big tech companies are looking out for your mental health and your well-being? About 7 in 10 teens say they don't, that they're distrustful of those companies.
Platforms.
And I think that that is an entry point to have this conversation and say, look, you've seen how some of these unintended consequences have played out in other places. You understand some of the motives that the companies may have. You understand some of the positive aspects that can come out of things like smartphone use, social media, use of AI in various aspects. Now you are equipped to use some of those digital critical thinking skills, some of those habits of mind, some of those mindsets that are going to set you up for safe use, but you're going to do it in a way where you're thinking critically about how the tech can support you and your goals instead of being using the tech sort of unwittingly. And I think that orientation that our young people have right now is a powerful foundation to build on as we're imagining responsible technology use. And it does start with creating spaces for digital literacy conversations across a school day or in homes for various folks who might be listening in the audience today.
I could not agree more. I am so excited. Like, this is that time of year where it's like, oh, okay, we're coming to the end of the year, and everyone, it's time for a nice break. And the reality is, like, this time is the opportunity. It's also just, it actually is a different kind of busy, where it's like, how do we prepare for next year? And I think one of the things I'm most excited about is, continuing to like look at some of the new content and resources that we are creating for schools, from lesson plans to toolkits and professional development, directly to support and build a confidence and understanding for educators so that they can bring these conversations into the classroom. Not necessarily that they all have to teach it, but they can all help reinforce the conversation and know where to find kind of resources for support, or at least provide some directionality to how they might address some of these issues. So I'm really excited for that and excited for this time. Now, for you, Robbie, as someone who is, you're a parent, you've been an educator in the classroom for many years, you've been an administrator for many years, you're a researcher, you're doing all these things. I'm curious, what is the next step that you're most excited about? Maybe just kind of like on your roadmap of next steps of work. Now that we've got these things out and available, what's on your roadmap that you think is going to be a good kind of successful step for folks to consider, or at least look out for? Look out for what Robbie's putting together.
Thanks, Merv. I think one of the things that I'm really excited about is a project to revamp some of our professional development offerings for teachers for the fall. The specific part that I'm excited about is spotlighting really cool educator use cases for AI. Again, we're not saying that folks have to use AI, but when you go out there and you're like, these are some really inspirational, really easy, like really cool ways that teachers are already using AI to improve outcomes in their classrooms or to serve needs that are existing in their communities. It's just really inspiring. And I think the other thing that I love about these spotlights that we're developing of educator practices is that not only are they teaching you how they've done these cool things in their spaces so that you can replicate them or take that learning and apply it to a challenge that you're having in their spaces. But these educators are also really thinking critically about some of the things that are challenging about the use of AI. They're thinking about bias. They're thinking about information that may not be accurate. They're thinking about data privacy and like how to think about what goes into a model and not. They're thinking about the types of things that systems are good for and not good for. So I guess what I'm reinforcing there is that educators have always had so much agency. They've always had a let's get it done, let's figure it out mindset in service of the things that educators care most about, which is making sure that their young people that they are charged with teaching every day are learning in the best way possible. And I'm just so excited to provide some of these inspirational use cases to shift the conversation and make it like a little bit more concrete and say, these are the types of things that can be unlocked when educators are trusted to use these tools. Yes, there's responsibility that's required. Yes, there's policies that are required. Like, yes, there's critical thinking that needs to be taught to the educators. But when you do some of that foundational work, look at the really cool and amazing outcomes that come out on the other side. So I'm not going to spoil the spotlights that we're building right now and provide specific examples as much as I want to. But I think that's one of the things that's we're excited about. And look, like, I think one of the messages that we shared at Riverside that like really resonated with folks is that even with AI, educator expertise is so essential. It's even more essential than it was before. Educators know things about the kids in their classrooms that AI models can't know. They know things about how
100%.
to teach that models can't know. A low quality, a lesson that's not aligned to standards or isn't good quality is still going to be low quality, even if you're using AI. A boring lesson is still going to be boring, even if you're using AI. So the role of the teacher hasn't changed, and it didn't change in the last edtech revolution. It's not changing now. It's just become so much more essential, and just really excited to sort of supercharge this idea of teacher agency within AI spaces to be able to like unlock really cool things with educator expertise in the mix.
For sure. Well, Robbie, I am so excited to see what's coming down the pipeline, how we can continue to support that work here at the organization. I think these are some incredibly important conversations. And I think the most important thing that we can do is take the time to really try to understand, take the time to really try to apply it in a way that makes the most sense for us and for our constituents, our students, especially, and how we support them. So for those of you all that joined us here today, please continue to follow Common Sense, stay connected, continue to provide us kind of the insight and the feedback, because that really shapes what we create and how we can provide that out to the world. I'm just, again, thank you, Robbie, for being here. So excited to have you in this discussion. And thank you again for joining another Common Sense conversation here with Common Sense Media. You all have a great rest of your afternoon.